Hey, it's me, Jesse C. It's really hard to get into superhero comic books, isn't it? I mean, there's so many reasons why, right? But when it comes to the Big Chew, the main superhero comic giants, one of the reasons is definitely how penetrable they are. Spider-Man has been around for 63 years. The scrappy young adult you identify with is old enough to be your granddad.
Miles, where did I put my web shooters?
If you wanted to read his comics, where would you even begin? Issue number 1 or issue number 1? Issue number 1 or issue number 1? Issue number 1 or issue number 1? Maybe issue number 1. Did I mention that publishers love resetting the count of comics all the time to make money off collectors and to appear approachable even though the continuity is still the same? Yeah, you see how the problem is self-inflicted, no? Realistically, you're better off starting by the writer. Grab a writer whose run people like, get a reading list, and do your best to just resist the many text boxes telling you to go read some other shit. Nothing to get you invested, like feeling like you're missing half the context. And it never ends, because even if you get back to read those issues, they're also going to tell you to go back to read even earlier issues, and on again, until you're so far back in time, you'll be wondering whether you should finish this issue or go off to kill baby Hitler. Which brings us finally to why this is the perfect time to get into comics. This time, or like a year ago, really. The Big Chew have both launched new comic lines, set up in alternate universes with the idea of simplifying continuity, modernizing the stories, and also just offering something different from the usual. These aren't just retellings either, these are straight up new and exciting stories. Funnily enough, both also have pretty much the same pitch of heroes being underdogs in a broken world where evil has won. Sorry, did I say funny? I mean sus. But let's not get bogged down on who copied who. The Big Chew share so much DNA in the form of writers, artists, and so on that really, who cares? They have a very, to put it in a horribly graphic way, incestuous relationship. These alternate lines are Marvel's Ultimate Universe and DC's Absolute Universe. I'm going to explain what each of those are and their backgrounds real quick, and then run you through the comics in each line, giving you their pitch, my thoughts on them, and if they might be for you. I'll try to avoid spoilers, but let's face it, if you're here, you're probably not that interested in going in extremely blind, so I'm gonna do my best to try to sell this shit to you, and that might include minor spoilers. Don't come at me complaining that I ruined the fact Jimmy Olsen appears in a Superman comic, okay? You settle down? Ready to go? Cozy? Can I get you anything? No? Okay, let me just... Huh? Oh, no, that was nothing. Don't worry about it. Let's go. Marvel in the Ultimate Universe first. Okay, so remember when I said the Ultimate line was great for newcomers and devoid of the burden of decades of continuity? Yeah, I lied. Calm down! The door's locked, you're stuck with me, there's nowhere to go. And also, it just sounds worse than it actually is. You don't actually need any of the background on this universe, but I think knowing the broad strokes does enhance your experience. Also, I need to justify having all that knowledge stored in my brain, so sit down and let me tell you a story. Years ago, Marvel created their Ultimate line of comics, a separate universe from their main continuity, whose focus was to reimagine Marvel characters with a modern touch. It always wobbled around the line between being something new and a retelling of Marvel's old best stories. Regardless, a major creative appeal to the writers behind it was the freedom it offered. It was a universe with all the constraints of the mainline comics, which begged for the status quo to be kept and the sanctity of characters to be maintained. More or less. Usually. Sometimes. For them, the Ultimate comics were a chance to push the envelope, start a new, better, greater, ultimate They ultimately did. You might even say? If your mother knocked you over the head a few too many times as a kid. Turns out, some people do need to be restricted in cushion rooms with nice white jackets. Look, long story short, it's Mark Millar's fault. Okay, let's make it a little longer. There were two modes of thought around the Ultimate Universe. Brian Michael Bendis' more hopeful approach, which launched the universe with Ultimate Spider-Man, which was really good by the way, and the anti-establishment, social critique, cheap shock value, misanthropic view of Mark Millar. Can you tell I don't like his work? Millar's work on the original Ultimates was very successful. A lot of the modern Avenger mythos even comes from it, but what political edge he had eventually blunted and it just became cheap shock value, which Marvel Editorial doubled down on as a vibe mandate if you will, making the Ultimate comics be consistent very unpleasant. There was cannibalism, incest, and just a lot of yuck. This all culminated in Ultimatum, one of comics' most infamous events, which killed and violated many characters and left the Ultimate Universe struggling along with a severe storytelling and financial limp it never recovered from. But then something happened. Something only possible in the mess that is shared universe comics, a medium that, through the revolving door of writers, is inherently collaborative. What happens to someone when life beats them down repeatedly? When they are put into a shitty situation after shitty situation. What happens to a hero who wants a better place but can't seem to find it anywhere in the horrible place they exist in? Well, they get into their heads to make it that better place. The ultimate version of Reed Richards, a naive, somewhat disconnected guy who meant well, goes through a lot. Some self-inflicted, some not. But by the end of Ultimate Fantastic Four, he's been abused by a number of writers. So in Ultimate Comics Doomsday, a miniseries composed of 4 miniseries, don't ask, I don't get it either, Michael Bendis develops things in a logical direction, and makes this beaten down, abused guy into a villain, lashing out against the universe he is in and its greater forces. Jonathan Hickman then later takes this idea and runs with it, turning Ultimate Reed into the Maker in Ultimate Fallout. There was a lot of proper nouns there, I'm sorry. This is the kind of shit that can only happen in comic books. A character consistently abused by the writers gets turned into a villain by another writer because, yeah, duh. And then later on, this new villain's ghost, perfect to justify a reboot. Additive storytelling, yes, sent into perfection. I love it. Now, by this point, the Ultimate Universe was crumbling under the weight of its own bad decisions and continuity, thing that it was created to avoid, and most of the lines weren't popular except for X-Men and Spider-Man. Point is, Marvel decided to kill off the line by destroying the entire universe. Yeah, bit harsh. During Secret Wars, no, not that one. Not that one either, yet that one. The universe imploded for reasons we cannot get into. Suffice to say, Hickman was involved and it was pretty good. And it also ties into his Avengers and Fantastic Four runs, which you should think about reading later because the guy's pretty good at what he does. Now, the writers quickly sequestered 2 characters from that universe before blowing it up. Miles, because the movie made him super popular, and the Maker, because why not, he's fun. They are the old Ultimate Universe's sole survivors. Finally, it's Jonathan Hickman again who sets up the stage for the Ultimate Universe's recent return and reboot with Ultimate Invasion by giving the Maker exactly what he wants. A better place. Or a place for him to make better, according to his own standards. And that place is the current Ultimate Universe. The Maker travels to a universe much like his original one, and preemptively stops most superheroes from becoming, well, heroes. Squashing Peter Spider, stopping Weapon X, putting Hulk through therapy, explaining to Danny Rand what cultural appropriation is, etc. I would like to point out that only one of those was a joke, by the way. This results in a world where geopolitics are very different from our own. Different nations, different conflicts, which is part of the fun. Hickman's world building is always great to see. I mean, here, America even stopped existing. You know what? Maybe the Maker does have some pretty good ideas. The world is split between the members of the Maker's Council, powerful supervillains. They are all public figures that pretend to be at odds publicly for the Matrix reason of people get antsy when everything's too perfect. This all is shown in Ultimate Invasion, which is 4 issues, and is the only thing I have mentioned so far that you actually should read. It sets up the world real nicely, and as far as the Ultimates comics are concerned, I'd argue it's pretty much required reading. And considering that's probably the best comic of the bunch, you want to read Ultimate Invasion. But without spoiling it too much, by the end of it, the Maker is trapped inside his golden city. In 2 years, the gates of St. Peter will open again and God will return, very angry. Meaning the Ultimates, the heroes who have discovered the truth of the world, have only 2 years to ignite a revolution and build an army for the apocalypse. The figurative apocalypse, not that guy. 2 years, 24 months. Which brings us to a peculiar feature of the Ultimate Comics. A month passes between every issue, which means that the Doomsday Clock is always ticking down, and the comics will not let you forget it. The downside is that it can cause some pacing issues. One of the Spider-Man comics has a conflict that spans 2 issues, and they set the first issue on the last day of the month so that the second issue can pick up from where the fight leaves off and still be in the next month. It's very silly. It works, but certain other comics are not that lucky. Ultimate X-Men is really hurt by the gimmick, I'd argue. But more on that later. And that's about it. Again, I should say, you don't need to read any of the old Ultimate stuff. In fact, you're doing yourself a favor by not doing it. Just watch an hour-long YouTube video about the Maker and you're golden. The Hickman Secret Wars, Fantastic Four, and Avengers stuff I do recommend, but those are for later, when and if you decide to dive into the mess that is the mainline comics. Yes, I do love the taste of Hickman's balls, why do you ask? Now let's finally talk about the comics that are actually in the current Ultimate line. There are 5 of them to choose from. The Ultimates, Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Wolverine, and Ultimate Black Panther. Since we just talked about the themes and the overarching plot of the universe, let's go with the Ultimates first, as it's a comic most directly related to the main plot of the Maker and all that. The Ultimate starts with Tony Stark and Doom. This Tony is just a kid that wants to do the right thing and fix the world, because he's a good lad. A good Iron Lad. I'm not proud of that one, but it does make me giggle. But much like his main universe counterpart, there is a bit of a want to fix the sins of his father. Now, Ultimate Doom is, in contrast, much different from his original counterpart, mainly because he's not Victor Von Doom. He is this universe's Reed Richards. Yeah, another Reed. I know, how original. He was captured and tortured by the Maker to the point of breaking his mind and making him think he brings nothing but doom to those around him. Okay, so, remember when I said the Maker suffered not only because of his circumstances, but also his own actions? Yeah, well, he hasn't taken his personal failures very well. Guilt has always been a central part of Reed. Guilt for what his experiment did to his family, guilt for that time he made a secret cabal of people to run the world. Yeah, that wasn't really cool either. So the Maker, as the worst version of Reed, doesn't deal well with that guilt and takes it all on himself. Literally. Or his out self. His outie, not his innie. Doom is interesting because although he is well-intentioned, he can have a one-track mind, and he's also very sneaky and sketchy. With him, it's always like he's teetering on the edge of heroism and villainy. Honestly, biggest lesson of the Ultimate line is that 616 Reed is really lucky that things went the way they did, because apparently, it's really easy to send the dude into a full-blown psychosis. After the ending of Ultimate Invasion, these two have the list that the Maker used to systematically stop heroes from being created. It has each hero's cape identity and secret identity, and also the thing that caused him to run around in tights. They use this information to go create and recruit other heroes to the team, so they can face the Maker when he returns. Fixing the world, that's the comic's tagline and their mission statement. What is really cool is that their plans right from the outset aren't a straightforward success. Turns out that people, would-be hero and civilian alike, are resistant to change, including dangerous superpower change. Exceptionally to dangerous superpower change, I should say. So their ideas on how to fix the world have to keep changing and evolving in poignant and even unexpected ways. And it's in the beauty of the Ultimates Network, as they call it, that the heart of the comic shines through, as we get to meet an amazing cast of characters and dive deep into their minds in conflict. And the cast is varied, from slightly recontextualized characters that you know and love, like Captain America, Tony Stark, Giant Man, and the Wasp, to brand new characters molded by this new cruel world that they inhabit, that also wear familiar mantles like She-Hulk and Hawkeye. Thus, the series does the best you could in an alternate universe story. Keep what works, but put it in a new scenario, and also just straight up inject new ideas. All in the service of the story and what it's trying to say regarding heroism and oppression. Dennis Camp is the main writer for this comic. And let's talk about his writing for a second here, because it's freaking tight. Not just in the slang way, but like literally tight. Well, not literally, but you get what I mean. I stand by the fact that the Ultimates is the best written comic of the whole Ultimate lineup. To me, the best comics are the ones that know how to balance one issue's story with a beginning, middle, and end with the ongoing overarching narrative of the series. The Ultimates has that balance down to a T, which makes every issue so satisfying to read from cover to cover. If you want a couple of great examples of the ways it has amazing single issue ideas, let me give you some of the stuff it does without spoiling the actual events of these issues. We have one issue that tells of Thor's rebellion against Loki, which sounds normal, right? Except it's done like an epic Norse poem, straight from the prose and poetic Eddas. If you don't know, those are the real life texts from which we know most of Norse mythology. The Vikings were big on poetry. The issue has no speech bubbles, only prose narration and wonderful picture spreads. Another issue gives us insight into Doom by always having 4 panels, each covering a different time period in his life. His origins, his torture by the Maker, what he's been working on for the Ultimates, and finally, the framing device for the entire issue, which is a conversation between him and Iron Lad in the present. If it seems like a lot, it's because it is a lot, but somehow, it never feels that way when you're reading. The conversation's framing, the layout of the panels, all of it keeps you on track as the issue slowly lays Doom bare before you. Top notch stuff. And it doesn't stop there, there's so many other great examples. There's a great issue with She-Hulk's origins that parallels the real-world careless nuclear testing in Bikini Atoll that affected the indigenous people there. This She-Hulk is coded, by the way, personality and design-wise. Or there's one issue that made me love Luke Cage, where he stages a prison riot, all the while talking about oppression, how it creates in and out groups and oppresses both regardless, even if one doesn't realize it, and how you have to band together with your fellow people because, you know the poem, first they came for blah 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 blah. It also talks about how the system itself resists change and must be transformed. Ah man, it's just so good. I'm even struggling, even choosing the panels to show you because they're all so good and essential. Awesome issue. And, by the way, if you look at the panel layout, what does it look like? That's right, prison bars. Just like in the cover, it's so clever. Come on! It's so fucking clever, and whenever Luke is about to break out, his panels get longer because he's breaking. God, fucking, this is so good, dude. And that's the thing about the Ultimates. It's a very political book, much like the original one, except this time, instead of satire, it's a genuine exploration of what to do when the system is broken and constantly abusive. It's about speaking truth to power, about not just how you dismantle that system, but how you replace it with something new that is just as strong. And there's also great fights too, not just big brain nonsense. Like the time when Giant Man and the Wasp are recruited, and god, the brutal Empire Strikes Back moment that is the fight against the Immortal Hulk. And in that issue, there's even a callback to the Taste Like Chicken panel that flips it and reverses it and makes it actually good. In short, if you want a comic that's fresh but also familiar and comfortably reasonable in a world that seems incredibly less reasonable every day, that is also solidly written and stupidly creative with the world, characters, and storytelling, then this is it. Go read it. You've got nothing to fear from us, ma'am. We just want the man in the big house. What does the letter in his head stand for, Mommy?
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine.
When it comes to Spider-Man, Marvel has 3 things they really like him to always be. He must always be miserable, never settle down for long, and be straight as a rod. Regardless, Ultimate Spider-Man allows us to do away with all that. Well, the first 2 things, at least. The third one is still just a Tumblr dream. In Ultimate Spider-Man, Peter is older, a dad, and married to MJ, and Uncle Ben's alive! Yup, he's a character here, can you believe that? Aunt May's dead though. Can't have it all. Still, even though things are mostly perfect, he does feel like he's missing something. That something is wrong. Like maybe he missed his vocation in life. That's when a package sent by Tony Stark changes everything, allowing Peter to take his stolen future back. Look, I'm not going to lie to you and say this is a good story and it's very well written, even though it is all that, and it wouldn't be a lie. But the main attraction here for sure is just seeing Peter be happy for once in his goddamn miserable life. The plot is about what you expect from Spider-Man. Peter has to juggle being a dad and husband with being a hero, with the exception that the drama here doesn't really come so much from interpersonal conflict, because his family is very supportive, thank God. Can you imagine seeing him get married and happy only to watch him get divorced? I'd die. No, the drama here comes more from the fact that it's dangerous to be a superhero in this world, to them and his family, and from what he has to do to keep them all safe. And it's even more dangerous as Peter is putting himself directly in opposition to the Maker's appointed ruler of New York, the Kingpin. Look at him! Look how huge he is! But the comic is, to my eternal delight, not just focused on Peter. It is more than happy to focus on the people around him as well. We get to see MJ segments, she gets to be the breadwinner, working as a PR boss bitch, and also dealing with her slightly dysfunctional side of the family, Gwen bits, and wow, she gets very interesting. I wasn't expecting what they did to her, and it's pretty cool. The dynamic journalistic duo of J. Jonah Jameson and Uncle Ben, as they sniff out the media's lies spread by the Maker, and even some sequences with Peter's kids, which I'm actually salty about because the oldest is the boy and the youngest is Mayday. It should have been the other way. Look, Mayday's an old fan favorite and we've been begging for anything more from her for decades by this point, and y'all focus on the boy? Fine, I'll just go back to reading Hellspinner, you dicks. Regardless, it's just nice to see Peter being a dad to his kids, and to see Mary Jane acting like, you know, Mary Jane, and not Lois Lane, or some doll being puppeted by editorial to make her the next new hottest superhero thing, because apparently everyone even remotely related to Peter needs to be a goddamn superhero sensation, because that's the only thing that they learned from Gwen and Miles. I have a very thorough dislike for Cape Media that insists on making every side character a superhero, because apparently you're not worth a damn if you're a normal person. Okay, back to Ultimate Spider-Man. It's a cozy comic for all of the reasons I listed, but I did find that because I was so invested in these characters and family, that the stakes were already very high when shit inevitably hit the fan. You want these people to be happy and safe, but that's anathema to heroics. But anyway, in terms of the rest of the Ultimate comics, Spider-Man fits a bit more of a traditional hero role here. One of his main early conflicts is whether he should kill or not. He has a family to keep safe after all, and this is a world controlled by supervillains. It's the kind of plot that could be trite, but I think the story approaches it with a refreshing amount of nuance and ground and perspective that makes it feel more like an exploration of the options more than a condemnation of either. It's mature, but not in an edgy way. Ultimate Spider-Man also offers a nice contrast to the Ultimates, where they just straight up kill people without even blinking. It's actually kind of funny how brutal it is in the background of that one. Though, to be fair, those guys are revolutionaries and they don't touch innocent people, while Peter is just a family guy that suddenly stumbled into superpowers. The story starts slow, which has not been to everyone's taste, but to me it's because it knows how refreshing its status quo is, so it delights in thoroughly exploring it and its implications and its characters before throwing a wrench into things. And it does do that because it's, you know, a story, conflict is needed. But for my part, there's a lot of cozy catharsis in just seeing these people and getting to know their worlds and personhoods before moving on. That cements how different an approach it is taken when compared to other Spider-Man books. And it keeps taking that different approach every single turn. For example, when it comes to Secret Identity, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but it treats that very differently, and it doesn't beat a dead horse with that trope. It's all fresh here. After all, it's written by the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who goes to off, Jonathan, the Hickman Heart! Okay, let's talk about the amazing art. It is initially done mostly by Marco Cacchetto and with colorist Matthew Wilson, but Dave Messina joins early on as a penciler as well, and oh boy does it look good. Love the designs, not big on the Goblin, but alas. Yeah, you know what, fuck the super suits. Everyone here just looks so stylish, the fashion sense is great, the faces are also so distinct and also voluminous, that's the word. And that hair, look at that hair, the shading, those lines. I love how the color peeks through from a bunch of black lines. And also how it uses the straight up black shadows on the background occasionally too. That with the black comic book paneling just gives it such a vibe. And it also uses those lines in the black to also indicate emotion. So like for example, there's a time when MJ's talking to her sister and she starts getting angry and you can see the panel getting darker and the lines getting messier. It's just so good. And the darkness fits with Peter being an underdog superhero in constant peril, like he has to be sneaky, covert, because the world is dark and full of terrors. The spaces, the volume of the background too, just love the grainy texture that the colors and the pencils have. This is the kind of art that's right up my alley, but all those things I mentioned are in service to the book, as they add up to a real stylish art that still keeps a grounded feel to it, which syncs with the story, making both word and drawing say the same thing. These are real people living real lives in a real world with real dangers. Why does it sound so much like I'm about to sing Barbie World? These are real Barbie people living real Barbie lives in a real Barbie world. Undress me everywhere. Imagination, life is your creation. Come on, Barbie, let's go party. Leslie, and I had no idea where to put this, I just gotta say, I love the way that they did Mysterio here. It's pretty cool. Ultimate Wolverine is the least exciting book here. Not because it's bad though, it's good, no major complaints about the writing or anything. Except that time a guy kept saying, oh my god, look at his hands! 12 different times in the span of like 4 pages. I get what the intention was, it's just really great. But otherwise, it's solid. Character voices are good, the villains are cool to watch because they are usually heroic X-Men, so it's fun to see them as baddies now. It's also just nice to see the Rasputin family together. Siblings that commit war crimes together stay together. So what's the deal? It's literally just Weapon X. Like literally. It's the old tired plot of Wolverine gets brainwashed and forced into killing his friends. The second issue shows the Maker literally killing the guy heading Weapon X. You f***ing with me, buddy? The second issue shows the Maker literally killing the guy heading Weapon X, only for it to happen anyway. Canon event, I guess. It's just so boring. We get this whole universe where you can explore different sides of characters, recontextualize stuff, do a million other cool things, and we get this shit again. But if you're not familiar or tired of that Wolverine storyline and you just want more of it, then you'll be fine with this. The comic sees Wolverine as a Winter Soldier, a brainwashed killing machine under the direction of the leaders of the Eurasian Republic, Colossus, Magic, and Omega Red, who are intent on weaponizing mutant kind, as the Republic is one of the only true locations in the world with mutants. The soldier is deployed against a mutant liberation, which shouldn't be confused with Mutant Liberation Front. They are an underground group of freedom fighters that use a conspicuous X as their symbol. But they aren't the X-Men because they already used that name for the Ultimate X-Men, even though the name was wasted there because it doesn't make any sense why those girls would call themselves the X-Men. It's just dumb and stupid. All of this, I don't like it. Did I convince you to read comics yet? I'm sorry. Okay. A thing I like. It used in-world documents and newspaper clippings inside the issues as extra pages, which I love. Hickman does that a lot, probably because of his graphic design background, but I like that we'd see it here too. Helps with the kind of political world building that this story needs. The action's pretty great too. Logan throws a dude into a bomb at one point just to check if it is actually a bomb, and that's just funny. I should also say, and minor spoilers here, but come on, not really. The brainwashing doesn't last, and eventually we get to see Logan fighting with the X-Men, Mutant Liberation. Logan and Sabretooth are kind of buddies. Or they were, but now they're at odds, so it's actually just the same shit, sorry. Happy thoughts. For as trite as the brainwashing is, it does fit the kind of world we have going on here. I just wish it wasn't done with Logan again. What else? Magic has apps. In this one panel, kinda, and nowhere else. Let's just move on. I thought Synchro was today. I mean, like, that's fine. I got nowhere else to be. Like, what even is time? You know what I mean? In contrast with Ultimate Wolverine, Ultimate X-Men is completely different from its counterpart in the main Marvel universe, and also even the old Ultimate one, so this one should be exactly what I want, right? Yeah, actually, I dislike this one the most, out of all the comics in this video. Before I get into all my grievances, I'll give you the pitch, and you see for yourself if it's something you might be interested in. Though the pitch isn't the problem. Ultimate X-Men follows Hisako, this universe's armor, a lonely girl grieving the loss of a friend, when a mysterious dark entity begins following her and she manifests her mutant powers. She begins searching for answers, befriending other mutant girls in the process, and becoming involved in a conspiracy around the mutant cult. The story is set in the Land of Fire, which is Maker World Japan, essentially. So the comic has a very clear anime manga influence, not just in the aesthetics in and out of the story, but also in the characterization and tropes present here. All this lovingly rendered in the watercolors of Peach Momoko, Marvel's latest darling, who I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of sick of hearing about already. So yeah, that's the book. If you feel like this might be your cup of tea, then skip the next couple minutes, because it's hate corner, y'all. Dialogue's bad. When you want it to be present, to flesh out characters' feelings, thoughts, or interactions, it's nowhere to be seen. Take the first time May manifests her powers. She creates a storm inside the house, and all her father has to say about that is that she needs to get out of the house because she's a punk. What? No questions? No, what was that? A localized storm this time of the year in the middle of my kitchen? No, did I leave the window open? Mind you, as far as this comic shows, the general public doesn't know about mutants yet, so why does he just accept this? Or Hisako's armor. No idea what she feels about it. She's scared of it at first, but then she never comments on it again. No questioning why it's a samurai. No nothing. There's just no dialogue about any of it. Things just happen in this comic and we move on. People don't meditate on it or even react to those things properly at all. But more on this later. When it is around, it's super functionary to expository, with little in the way of character voices. Out of all the comics I read for this video, this is the one where I kept repeatedly saying out loud, nobody talks like this. This is not the worst problem by itself. It's not by itself though. The pacing is the worst. Somehow, the plot progresses glacially, yet we also paradoxically don't get much character development. For some godforsaken reason, the comic insists on cutting away from the main girls to focus on introducing even more new underdeveloped characters or to show what the villains are doing. Let's look at issue 7 for example. We spend 9 pages with the cult, 8 with a random ass new character, and you know how many with our main cast? Our main entirely underdeveloped by that point cast? 4 pages. A total of 4 pages. This, by the way, is the issue where they are going to a festival. The first opportunity we could have had to see them all interacting together as friends or do anything of consequence. And the issue ends as the festival starts. And since every issue is a month, per the ultimate gimmick, the next issue picks up with them back at school. The gimmick hurts this comic the most. This is a story that begs us to live with these characters in their day-to-day lives, to get to know them intimately, but we don't. When Hisako suddenly says she is not alone anymore during a fight, to counter the guy acting like the physical manifestation of her grief, it feels completely unearned, because she just met these fucking people, and has barely interacted with them at all. Not to mention shit like when an issue ends with Nico saying the word Not to mention shit like when Nico ends an issue by saying the word Not to mention the shit, you bitch. Not to mention shit like when an issue ends with Nico saying the word mutant for the first time in the series here, only for the next issue to pick up a month later with the girls just going, wasn't that weird when she said that a month ago? Like, they really just fucking ignore that for a whole month? They don't even know what mutants are. They don't know anything. They should be searching for clues and answers everywhere, and they just ignored that. Ah, God, man. This is fucking infuriating, because I see the vision. This is a book that should be character-driven. Hell, the first issue has great panels showcasing Hisako's inner world and feelings, but it insists on these stupid-ass detractions all the goddamn time, leaving barely any room for the main girls to grow. Keeps doing that stupid anime thing where they introduce a character who's clearly going to be important later, then abruptly cutting away so many fucking times. This is not to say that the book doesn't try to get you to buy in with these characters. It does, but it doesn't connect, because it's like it's trying to speedrun empathy. The closest it got with me is May's backstory, and that's like a background thing. It's not even that focused on. For us to truly connect with the girls, I would have loved to have learned information alongside them and seen them react to it. Instead, we learn shit from cutaways to other characters explaining the mysteries. Stories are action and reaction. This comic is only action. Shit happens, people don't react, and we are on to the next thing. I've heard people say this is a great comic because X-Men in high school learning to deal with their powers is exactly what we should get, but we never see them dealing with their powers. The most we get is Hisako training her armor once, and that scene is ruined because for some reason it's used to introduce us to yet another fucking side character that I'm sure will only become relevant 10 issues from now. Okay. So, the pacing is bad, which leaves us with paper-thin characters and a clunky story. We're done though. Peach's art is great, but it feels ill-placed here. This comic has so much dark shit going on, and the art style feels very tonally dissonant with it. Carelessly so at times. Sometimes there's a face that is so exaggerated, it ends up being goofy, but the moment's supposed to be super f***ed up. Like, there is one moment that sticks out to me where supposedly everything gets dark, but the watercolors are still super bright. Though, to be fair, the comic usually does get the color super right, it's just this one moment that seems to be a unique f***up. All this I could be fine with if it felt like the comic had something to say. But the thing about Ultimate X-Men that kills my interest is that it feels aimless. It touches on a bunch of topics, grief, child abuse, cults, stalkers, loneliness, but it just dips its toes into these themes, it never takes the dive. It speaks about everything, so it ends up speaking about nothing, which sucks because you inevitably feel like comparing it to other X-Men stories, and the best of those comment on so much stuff like politics, minorities, about bigotry, etc., and it does so with a lot of love. It has something to say. Ultimate X-Men feels so preoccupied with telling a story, as in a sequence of events that follow each other with characters in action, that it forgets to actually say anything of substance with those events. Which is a shame because centering the plot around the cult fits the X-Men theme perfectly, as cults famously prey on outcasts of society, but the comic keeps trying to do so much, it never properly explores that side of things. It's clearly building up to something, and later on it does start working the themes it set up a little bit more, but it's too little too late. Maybe this is for you, but to me, this isn't bad because it's different than your standard X-Men story, but because it's executed badly. Also, why is the group comprised entirely of high school girls calling themselves the X-Men? Like, where did the X come from? Where did the men come from? You'd think they'd call themselves the X-Women or the X-Girls or anything else. We're the X-Girls, and we're gonna put a spell on you. Gonna put a spell on you. Ultimate Black Panther is honestly not a comic I have much to say about, mostly because it might as well be a mainline universe Black Panther book, which is boring considering these are supposed to be new takes on the characters. Once again, I'm saying this. Granted, this Wakanda does feel closer to the MCU's depiction of it. Essentially, it has the same problem as Ultimate Wolverine. Africa is ruled by Ra and Khonshu of the Maker's Council, and recently they have been expanding more aggressively, terrorizing entire villages for resources. This grieves King T'Challa because Wakanda is still a reclusive, secret kingdom, even though he thinks all the people of Africa are his people, and his kingdom should help them. Not doing enough for the people outside Wakanda is something he keeps agonizing over for like 8 issues, even after he does start fighting the Maker's lieutenants. So I ask, why don't you just do more then? You're the king. It's not like anybody's holding you back, dude. The reason is that if he did, he wouldn't have anything to brood over. So yeah, the comic is about exploitation of the land and people and the cost of waging war against your fellow men. Up until that plot thread reaches a super anticlimactic conclusion, and it becomes about something else and I stop reading. I'm not going to spoil what replaces those two as villains, but it's substantially less interesting to me. There's a lot of talk about Vibranium and its secrets, and maybe an interesting theme of nations being ruled by a slavish want for resources, but it's a faint one that isn't really explored enough at the start to keep me interested. And don't get me started on the constant dreams, ugh. They aren't fun, abstract, and laden with meaning like some of the stuff we'll see in Absolute Martian Manhunter. They are very straightforward and kinda boring, making it feel like they just take up pages and time we should be spending in something else. It's also just a way too self-serious book. There's a lot of people standing around rooms with green faces talking cryptically about duty and destiny. Like seriously, I decided to grab all of the comics and start scrolling just to see how long it took for anyone to smile. And I just kept going, and going, and going, and going. I kid you not, in volume 1, there are 2 pages where someone smiles. Of 140 pages. In volume 2, with about as many pages, there are 8 pages with smiles. Nearly all are maniacal smiles, or soft ones from the Sorcerer Supreme character that is introduced in. I'm not implying quality or anything from this, I'm just saying that's the vibe. T'Challa and Okoye, his wife, or Shuri, his sister, barely show any affection towards one another whatsoever. In fact, they fight a lot. Even T'Chaka, in the one scene he has together with T'Challa before he, you know, T'Chakas, don't show any affection or warmth towards one another. There's no pathos anywhere here. It's just a comic full of super serious, super stoic, super people. The best thing I can say about it is that Killmonger and Storm's designs are f***ing sick. Look at that. Give me more of that shit. Less of this one though. Ugh, why is his mouth out like that? Storm and Killmonger are way more interesting. They are sent on a mission to get a sorceress so that T'Challa has mystical guidance to supplement his more scientific way of seeing things. And the sorceress they get is a really cool character and... Why is she wearing a skirt? She was in prison. Why is she wearing a skirt? I know this is a really weird thing to get hung up on, but... Why is she wearing a skirt? And what a tragedy that the most boring character is the main one. Usually conventional writing advice tells us that you should make your protagonist the most interesting character. I've heard people comparing the story to Dune, which I very much see, with all the talk about power, war, and prophecy. So if Dune meets Black Panther sounds interesting in that respect, you might be into this. Also, it's weird that T'Challa gets a prophecy about cucking Killmonger. I'm not joking, by the way. So that's the Ultimate Universe. It's a mixed bag. One of the best comics around, plus a really solid one that you might find too slow, and 3 other ones that range from bad to just boring. But I'd like to talk about the thing that makes it special nonetheless before we end the video. As I was making this video, Marvel announced the end of the current lineup of Ultimate Comics. It will all culminate with a big event called Endgame with the fight against the Maker. This, of course, shouldn't come as a surprise. We had a deadline right from the start, right? 2 years to fix the world. The question is this the end of the universe? All comics will end, that is confirmed, but the real question is if they will be relaunched. Everyone's sure that yes, they will, but even if they do, they might be completely different. Anything could happen here. Maybe Peter will die and will accompany his children as they themselves become heroes. Maybe the books that are performed too well won't be relaunched at all and will be replaced with different titles. And that's what's so exciting about this whole project. It has an end date, no mid-run cancellations, no loose threads. We have a beginning, middle, and end, and no status quo to obey. Everyone got to see their vision through, regardless of my opinion of said vision, and that, in the world of comics, is an immense luxury and super special. I'm glad for them. Hell, endings in general are very peculiar in this industry. Marvel and DC will forever keep their universes going in one form or another. They are tried and true formulas to get new people in, and they're also old, so they're nostalgic, which keeps the older fans around. But projects like the Ultimate and Absolute universes are really special. They are like a comet that passes once in a while and lights up the night sky, reminding us of how special the universe is. They are the break in the monotony that makes us appreciate the monotony a little bit more. Let's turn over to the Absolute line of comics by DC. This one is actually even easier to get into than the Ultimate one, because there's no backstory necessary at all. You can just drop in. Also, if I'm being honest here, it might just actually be better overall, and I'm saying this as someone who has always been a Marvel peep. The Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Deadpool, Black Panther, X-Men, Iron Man, She-Hulk, all my favorite heroes are there. And I'm not even that familiar with the ongoing comics from DC, mostly just their graphic novels. So I don't say it lightly when I say that the Absolute line is better overall. Or at the very least, they have a better batting average. Now, there is backstory if you care to know, it just isn't necessary. Okay, so in the miniseries for the Absolute Power event, Amanda Waller decides to go all MCU Zemo and is like, let's get rid of all superpowered people, period. Most of the mini here isn't relevant to us, but I did read it and thought it was pretty cool. Nothing groundbreaking, but explores really well what makes a hero, spoilers, it's not the powers, Anyway, important to us is that the Flash learns Amanda is building a multiversal army, so he's forced to cut off their universe from the multiverse. Except in the Comet Rush, he ends up doing so seemingly permanently. Which brings us to the DC All-In Special, which acts as an abrupt single-issue setup to the Absolute Universe. It's honestly not that interesting by itself, and it kind of barely makes sense. A lot of it is loosely connected, and you can barely follow the supposed logical through line. Darkseid, the DC Thanos, which is actually the character who Marvel ripped off to make Thanos, so it's more like Thanos the Marvel Darkseid. Okay, I lost the plot, let me start the phrase again. In this issue, Darkseid breaks into the Justice League's new Watchtower and says, "Fight me!" So they kill him! Not even joking! Boom! Absolute Universe! Okay, so there's a second half to the issue that does explain what the heck was going on there. Essentially, closing off the multiverse sends him into a rampage for some reason. He makes a miracle machine that affords him one wish, and he wishes to fuse with Spectre. Okay, so, Spectre, whew. Alright, so he's like God's agent in our world? Like Capital G God? Like Yahweh? Jesus' dad? And or hin and or neither? The Christian God? Yeah, well, he's canon in the DC universe. There's more lore to it, but let's just leave it at that. Anyway, so Spectre is like super powerful. Has divine knowledge, can randomly just remove magic from the universe. He's a whole thing. Spectre is all like, "Darkseid, you are part of God's plan. Light cannot exist without the dark." And Darkseid's like, "I don't want to be a part of God's plan. I want to kill." Spectre tells Darkseid that he is literally the embodiment to the opposite force of life in the universe. It gets very into the meta-narrative of comics here. It goes on to talk about how his power ebbs and flows, as in it's inconsistent between stories because of different writers and because he is what the narrative needs him to be for the good guy stories to, you know, work. The absolute villain that exists so that good can persevere, essentially. He has no double in the multiverse because he is an essential force of it. Hence also why he went on his rampage. He felt weak and hungry for power since he was connected from the rest of his essence left in the greater multiverse. I think. It's all very vague and abstract. Also barely explained and mostly convenient for the things we need to happen. So it's all like, okay, so I'm always going to exist in some way, but if things keep being the way that they are, I'm just going to be a footstool for the superhero stories. So instead, I'm going to die. Like I said, it's very meta. This reads essentially like Darkseid being done if all main superhero comics just go on forever and ever, with him being passed around from writer to writer like a blunt. And he's like, let's go somewhere where things can change meaningfully. I dig it. It's a really cool idea, even if the story isn't executed that well, to my taste. And he can begin again alone, in a world of his own creation. One that, unlike the main DC one, who is driven by hope and life, will be driven by challenge and turmoil. If that last part doesn't make a lot of sense to you, it doesn't to me as well. I don't really get how him dying gives him the power to create another universe. Doubly so when the Spectre is separated from him before he dies. Like, I get that he's like the embodiment of turmoil and stuff, but that doesn't mean he has reality-altering powers, does it? I don't know, it feels very weird. Whatever, it really doesn't matter. Let's get to the good stuff. So he makes a universe where hope is not the norm and just is not the system. A universe where despair and evil reigns and the heroes are the underdogs, having to shine even brighter than they usually did in the main universe just to survive. So, you know, it's like our world, where evil reigns. Oh boy. There's also something of a background story that eventually Darkseid will reform and return to fight the heroes in the main universe after gathering energy from the universe he created, but that's like, whatever. And like the Ultimate Comics, the multiversal plot thread here is not really that relevant or important. So that's the idea of the Absolute Universe. Evil has won and has curbed the heroes by taking away something important to them. Diana lost her people, the Amazons, and is raised in hell alone. Superman never gets to have his Kansas childhood, being forced to see his family and planet die and coming to Earth already as a teen. And Bruce? Well, they took away his money. I know he really got the short end of the stick there. Can you imagine how hard that must be, not being born a millionaire? Truly, he is the biggest victim here. What I like about Absolute is that it's edgy, but it's presentation-wise. Like, sucks, people die and some horrific stuff happens, but it's never cheap. And it's always in service of the story and highlighting what makes these heroes heroes. Diana isn't a jerk just because she came from hell. No. It's because of the life she lived that she has an even stronger sense of justice and gentleness. Same for the others. It's edgy, but not misanthropic, as a lot of edgy works tend to be, like the original Ultimate Comics could often come across, for example. Absolute Wonder Woman is about the best comic in this line, my dude. I love it so much. Okay, so Zeus gets rid of the Amazons for their crimes against the gods, and as a bonus, kidnaps Princess Diana and sends her to hell to be the ward of Circe, who is also stuck there due to her own defiance of the gods. Now, Circe is one of Diana's arch nemesis in the main continuity, so her raising Diana is crazy, but I swear it's the sweetest thing ever. The comic does a lot to develop the relationship and imbue it with emotion, and I maybe cried twice. Which isn't saying a lot, I cry a lot. I am a crybaby, it's very easy to make me cry with media. Still, at the end of some issues, we even get little comic strips of young Diana and the many hellish beasts she kept as pets, because she can't help but just be nice to everything and everyone. It's so cute! The way the comic visually shows Diana growing in the passage of time and all the lessons Circe imparts is simple but very effective. Like, this is great paneling. Not to mention using some very beautiful page spreads. Now, this is a comic that sells itself on you very fast. Diana learns a lot from her adoptive mother, including witchcraft. Yeah, this Wonder Woman is a witch, and it's awesome. None of that Harry Potter shit. This is soak your face in blood and cut off your body parts type witchcraft. And the comic uses her magic knowledge and abilities to their full potential, as Diana is always using magic to cleverly give her an edge in fights where she's completely outclassed. Like during her first fight with the Tetracide, who also, by the way, is such a cool creature. Its name comes from the fact it can kill you in 4 different ways. It presents a problem that Diana can't just hit, so she has to think on her feet. And also hit real hard, while also minding the civilians, because she has to rescue them. And the Tetracide isn't a one-off, the comic just keeps it coming with cool magical creatures and items and lore and so on. But the Tetracide is particularly cool because the magical solution Diana comes up with also connects with the themes of the story, compassion, kindness, trust, and sacrifice, and shows us a lot about who she is, which is great for her introductory story. I also particularly like that Diana isn't the only person that has to do the work to keep people safe here. Everyone has to do their part. Okay, so I got so excited talking about the writing that I forgot to tell you who is doing it, and that is Kelly Thompson. Now, pulling back to the story, the goddesses have a greater purpose for Diana. So Circe is preparing her for the moment she will have to leave Hell to take the fight to the gods in search for her lost Amazon sisters, while also protecting the world. And her fight with the Tetracide makes Wonder Woman enter the absolute world like a shining light in the darkness. Talking about striking visuals, the art is absolutely gorgeous, I love it so much. There's so much depth to the backgrounds. Inhabited spaces have so much clutter and detail, which makes all these spaces feel so real and lived in. And the gods' designs, oh, they are deliciously out there, like Divinity should be. Like, I love the Justice League animated show, but their Hades looked like some guy and I never forgot how lame it was when he appeared. Compare him to this guy. It's like Hercules' Hades let his hair grow a bit too out of control. And god, this is one of the best Wonder Woman designs ever. Look, I'm not saying she has to be mega buff, but it kills me every time I see a supposed powerhouse superheroine with Barbie arms. Look, I thought about ranting about this sort of thing, you know, misogyny in generals in comics for a second here, but honestly, it's clearly on its way out, so for once, I'm just gonna take the W and be happy. William, my friend, your dream has come true. We're surrounded by muscle mommies. But Diana should at least look like an athlete. Absolute Wonder Woman is buff but doesn't have mega defined muscles, though you can still see their shape and form. It just feels right for a Diana that is half witch, half warrior. Her outfit screams dummy, but her eyes say mommy. But before you judge me, let's remind ourselves that the intention behind the creation of Wonder Woman was explicitly to make a dummy mommy. So don't even at me, okay? I have historical backing to the things I say, not just internet brain rot. Though that's a part of it. The art comes to us courtesy of Hayden Sherman and Jordi Belair for the colors. Let's talk about Diana's nocturnal arms. The lasso of truth? Get out of here with that shit. Now it's the Nemesis lasso, and it acts like the Ghost Rider's penance stare. It hurts in proportion to the evil you have done. How sick is that? Fits right into the mythology and the vibe for this new version of Diana by being more aggressive, but still keeping the idea behind the original lasso of the just and good not having to be afraid of it. I actually also lied, there's 3 lassos that all do different things, and they're all color-coded, which is very nice. I love that for some reason, like, it just really makes me happy that they are, I don't know why. But I'm not gonna explain what the others do, because I'll leave that as a little mystery for you. There you go read it. The Athena blade is her off giant sword that grows in size, and comes out of a pouch to really hammer in that witchy vibe. Thing is, I usually don't like when Wonder Woman has a sword and shield, cause like, her shield are her bracers, and her sword is her arm. Why would she need those things when she already has them? You know what I mean? But the Athena sword just makes sense here, with all the other witches tools she has. And it doesn't feel like it runs counter to what she represents. Cause, you know, main universe Diana is very much an agent of peace, so it is always weird when she has the sword, and also, it just kinda makes her look weaker in comparison to the other superheroes who are out there just punching people. Like, oh yeah, she needs a sword, yeah, the woman needs a sword, the guys can just use their fists, you know what I mean? And to top it all off, Diana rides in on a fucking undead Pegasus, rather, the Pegasus, who was slain by Zeus, meaning her and her ride got a bone to pick with the big Z. I do so appreciate also that the comic sets up a wide supporting cast of characters for Diana to bounce off of. Is that right? Bounce off of? I don't need the second off, right? It would have been easy to just leave her by herself, but I'm glad that they did it. And I'm glad that they are actually using the side characters. So yeah, I can't sing the praises of this comic enough. It's top notch, and I'd argue the best of the absolute bunch, with exception maybe to Absolute Martian Manhunter. Which is, funnily enough, written by Dennis Camp, who, if you remember, is also the guy who wrote the Ultimates. Like I said, Marvel and DC, they have a bit of an open relationship going on, very into sharing. There is something really wrong on how I choose to phrase things, and I can't quite put a finger on what that is. So yeah, no surprise the writing here is fucking solid then. Though this comic is a bit different compared to the others in the Absolute lineup, because whereas most other Absolute heroes mostly keep the core of their heroes intact, this Martian Manhunter is neither Martian nor a Manhunter. He's a completely different character and thing. And while I can understand and would usually side with people who might be disappointed in this, expecting MM to get the treatment that WM, SM, and PM got, why am I short? This comic is so unique and competent in its vision that I personally can't be mad. Well, mostly competent, like 99% of the time.
We're the Martian mindful.
It's just dumb, I'm sorry. The first issue too, Jesus. Okay, so Absolute Martian Manhunter is about an FBI agent on the Stochastic Terrorist Task Force who gets caught in a random bombing, which leaves him rattled and with an alien attached to his mind. The two partner up to stop an alien invasion by the enemy of the good green alien, a being called the White Martian. Now, this is the kicker. The concept that I thought was so cool. It's a mild spoiler, I guess, but I don't think it's a huge loss to tell you. The invasion is not physical, it is psychic. The aliens do not come from a place in real space, but some kind of world of thought. Even calling it a world or a dimension is a bit misleading because it's neither of those things, it's somewhere else. It's, you know, very conceptual. Anyways, advanced societies produce toxic thoughts. Bad vibes, as the green alien puts it. The White Martian can exploit those thoughts, amplify them, implant them, and cause people to do random acts of violence, like blowing up a coffee shop with an FBI agent inside it. All of this to collapse society's psychic sphere and destroy it. Maybe that collapse means everyone goes brain dead, or maybe it's a societal collapse like any other except the nudge wasn't from the inside but the outside. It doesn't clear up what exactly that means, just that it's bad. It's trippy, it's what it is, like everything about this comic. So it's up to John and the Martian to go around fixing people's thoughts and actions to undo the sabotage done by the White Martian and stop them. Now, this all might sound very smarty pants, but to be clear, we do have some exciting action moments here. They just also happen to look like an LSD trip where thoughts take physical artistic form. Now, aside from the cool premise that is both very familiar but also very innovative, the fun part of the comic is the interaction between John Jones, the FBI agent, and the alien in his mind, the Green Martian. Their conversations are awesome for a variety of reasons. For one, they are extremely dynamic, with the alien just appearing in random elements of the environment, like newspapers, traffic lights, mailboxes, or whatever else, which makes for visually interesting conversations. For two, the Martian's alien. Not as in from outer space, but like foreign, unlike anything here, unlike anything you know. To talk, it has to translate its ideas to be understood by John Jones. It does that by using words and synonyms to try to get across the idea it means. It speaks in concepts fractured, and when all else fails, it taps into John's memories to visually convey meaning. So it's a lot of talk that tries to somehow get connotation in without having the connotation in the language. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? I don't know if it makes sense. This whole thing is trippy and I love it. Another unique thing that is a huge part of what makes Absolute Martian Manhunter so unique is the powers that the Martian gives John. It allows him to not just kind of read minds, but smell them, feel them, see them, like they are colors, smoke. It's synesthesia in steroids, which results in some truly trippy pages. But they aren't weird for the sake of being weird, everything is intentionally placed. The lines, their wobble, thickness, and the composition, and the color choice, and everything. Not to sound like I'm wearing thick glasses, a black turtleneck, and a liberal arts degree, but it's that, mon ami. Art by Javier Rodriguez. It is so much weird trippy shit that I'm not even joking, I had a headache by the time I finished reading. Like, this shit is awesome, but Christ man, it's a lot. Brutal on the mind. A mindfuck, if you will. A Martian mindfuck. Oh god damn it, I don't want to validate that shit. It's so dumb. I am particularly fond of the moments when a common turn of phrase is turned literal. It's on the nose, literally, but after pages of trippy shit, you learn to appreciate the simple stuff too. But it's truly a comic that fully utilized its own medium, from the way the fonts are used, to panel composition, to even offering you a page that reveals a secret only when you hold it up to the light. It's crazy cool stuff. I couldn't enjoy the secret and tactility of it because, you know, the issues aren't here yet. I have to get things online. I'm sorry. It sucks. I really wish I could support things properly, but buying things that have dollar signs instead of, you know, real signs, it's not. I can't. Please, DC, Marvel, international releases, make them easier, you dumbasses. Issue 4 is my favorite when it comes to the visuals. John just goes around fixing stuff while the Martian is on the background, literally trying to fix the sabotaged sun. Like, look at these panels. As John and the alien get accustomed to each other, the powers also change. Again, the alien comes from a place where thought is power. He doesn't really obey the rules of real space, so John can kind of just think his way around, and I just love how it's depicted. I guess in a way, it's kind of like the OG Martian turning intangible. I will also note how there's a recurring motif of fire and smoke here, as kind of a repurposing of the Martian Manhunter's classic weakness. Another theme that the series explores is the feeling of alienation and detachment that John experiences relating to the people around him, mainly with his wife and kid, which leads to great panels that I don't think I have to explain. Hell, his co-workers literally nicknamed him the Martian, even before the actual Martian came along. Well, I mean, he's not an actual Martian, like I said. Look, you get it. Only thing that worries me is how the comic so far has seemingly brushed off the fact that there's a bunch of people who were literally mind controlled. Absolute Superman is initially split into 2 time segments, and neither of them is a good time. I'll be here never. Back in Krypton, Kal-El leads a peaceful farm life in his weird-ass planet with his family and dog. No, seriously, Krypton is very weird here, and I kinda love it. Very sci-fi. But they begin to notice strange things happening to the fauna and flora and in the Earth itself. Outside his family, Krypton's people are divided into the science and labor guilds. Labor is treated as nothing more than grunts that are best seen working and not heard talking. Kal-El's family is part of the labor guild, so when they bring up their concerns, they go unheard. And the story goes on from there. It's honestly my favorite of the 2 sides of the comic at the start. The second segment happens during present day, with an older Kal-El, now on Earth, living on the run from the private military branch of Lazarus Corp. The story cleverly weaves both narratives together thematically by showing Earth's parallels with Krypton, with Lazarus' exploitation of their workers and the Earth. These parallels are not lost on Superman, and they are what motivates him to help the people of Earth, to ensure another Krypton doesn't happen. You'll see this even more of Absolute Batman, but there's a whole bunch of commentary and themes about labor abuse and oppression in the Absolute line. Definitely just fictional stuff though. No such things happening nowadays. So, was that Jeff Bezos? What are you doing here, Jeff? Oh, you're going out to lunch for billionaire buddies Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and Sundar Pichai? Well, that's fun. Can I get an address? I have a package I'd like you all to open. A plot thread that the series quickly gets into is whether Superman should kill or not. Differently from Spider-Man, this one feels a little trite, I'll be honest. The Ultimate and Absolute universes are interesting because they represent completely corrupt systems. Worlds where you can't just throw an enemy in jail and put them out of your mind. Which, by the way, is a thing that one of the Ultimate comics brings up. The Ultimate is such a good comic. The jail is run by the baddies. So what do you do then? So far, this plot thread has felt very cliche. A guy does awful things, Superman doesn't want to get rid of him, yada yada yada, more people die because of that. Granted, it hasn't resolved yet, so maybe it will curve or resolve in an interesting way. I think the strong point of this comic is just how clever it is about the framing of Superman's mythology and cast. For example, Kal-El's cape is also his ship that's made of a dust-like material that coalesces into other shapes at will, which I love. I just really love all this sci-fi stuff that this comic has. Like, it really gives some texture to the world. From Brainiac, to the cape, to the technology that the Omega Men use. Downside to this, that the cape also has an AI named So, which I feel doesn't really add anything except occasional meaningless narration that I'd rather not have. Okay, so some minor spoilers here that again aren't ruin any surprises. Lazarus is headed by director Ra's al Ghul, which you should have guessed by the name, right? And a really thematic but also really funny thing is that the upper echelon of Lazarus is named the League of Shareholders. Isn't that the perfect villain for a labor-focused Superman? No, but really, Raz is massive here, and his intro already sets him up as the kind of villain you just want to see get absolutely destroyed. Yeah, I'm back on these puns. I know it's been a while. Another villain working with Lazarus is their trusty AI Brainiac, and boy, Brainiac's origin is so good. Now, his design and intro is the kind of edgy that immediately makes you a bit worried that we're getting a modern Joker face moment, but thankfully, his up state of being is actually an important part of the story, because he's kind of a foil to Superman in a way. Oppression can make you, it can galvanize you to turn your pain into something beautiful, the will to be a hero, to never let anything like that ever happen again to someone else, like with Kal-El, but Brainiac, however, is the other side of the coin. The far more common result of oppression, which is what happens when it breaks you. Not what happens when it turns you into someone who wants to oppress other people, but someone who is truly broken by it. I need to make that difference clear. Lois Lane is also here as a part of Lazarus' army, which does fit her, as she has always been a determined, stubborn military brat. It's weird at first, but the more you think about it, the more it works. Though I gotta say, in the middle of a crisis, Lane here is sniffing Superman. I don't like that kind of romance writing, I'll be honest. Jimmy Olsen's also here as a member of the Omega Men, the resistance group that fights Lazarus, and the Omega Men are pretty cool, visually and otherwise. When their leader isn't committing workplace abuse, that is. Though I guess he's had it coming for a while now. Absolute Batman looks like he shoved Christian Bale and Robert Pattinson to a sandwich and ate it. Look at this unit of a lad. He's younger than me and he's like twice my size and width. I think out of all of these comics, Absolute Batman is the one of the most interesting and clever rearrangement of the bits and pieces of the hero's original mythology. It's all different, but all familiar. Every issue feels so dense and rich. This is Scott Snyder at his best. Bruce was born to a family of working class people, and one of them is even alive. Surprising, unusual for Batman. Famously dead parents. The other died in a random shooting that echoes Bruce's original, origins, by happening during an outing that was quote-unquote his fault. It's during a trip to the zoo that Bruce won from an engineering contest thing. Oh yeah, this Bruce is also an engineer. Hands-on kind of guy, a greasy geek. And this aspect of him really shows with his new costume and his bat fingers framed stilts, wherever the these are. Thumbs. They're bat thumbs. They have hooks at the ends, being modeled after real bats' limbs. Uses them in a number of versatile ways, like to scale, to fight, and to hang loose. Much like Absolute Wonder Woman, this goes to show that changing your hero's equipment goes a long way to keeping them fresh, and does absolute wonders to also enhance their new character. See what I did there? Absolute wonders? I should have done that on the Wonder Woman segment. I'm so stupid. This Bruce is also considerably less alone right out of the gate, even though he does try to distance himself from people still. So don't worry. He is still a broody bat. This Bruce is considerably angrier and more aggressive, which is a nice departure from stoic Batman. That IMO has gotten immensely boring. This Bruce has a lot going on. As competent as he still feels like a young, angry boy to me, you know? We have Martha,
Why did you say that thing?
Wayne, who works with Mayor Gordon. Yeah, dude went to politics after the force. He truly can't help but to try and fix things from the inside, even though we all know, it's broken. Yeah, you just got it, it's broken. And Barbara's also here following in his footsteps by being a cop. And a really cool change here is that Bruce's whole gang of childhood friends is composed of his rogues gallery. The Penguin, the Riddler, Killer Croc, Harvey Dent, Catwoman, and it's great to see how tight they all are. Can't wait for nothing to go wrong with them, ever. I particularly enjoy how we get to see some background relationship stuff between Selina and Bruce. If they end up at odds, it will be way more believable for me when Bruce inevitably lets her get away, because, let's be honest, it was always kind of weird how the guy that loves going around breaking criminals' bones always lets the burglar off easy. Or gets her off easy, huh? The first arc of the series is extremely solid because of the thematic resonance of the Black Mask's big plan, which I can only describe as an advanced capitalist dystopia's version of a YouTuber social experiment. And I just realized I am describing a Mr. Beast video. It's a morality problem to the average person that kind of reminds me of the Dark Knight's boat scene, and even Batman himself is offered a deal that just kind of makes sense in a utilitarian way. I think the series does cool off after that, pun intended. The quality overall doesn't nosedive or anything, it just feels kind of less thematically impactful. Though they do set up a few teasing crumbs about bigger things and plans in motion that are tied to the overarching plot, which will keep you hooked no matter what. Like the Joker, who's a CEO in this world, and is nicknamed as such because he doesn't laugh. Once again, a CEO versus a working class hero, what could they have meant by this? Arkhan's also not an asylum here, but a black site owned by Joker's company, which is such a great way of showcasing how f***ed up this universe is, because metaphorically, it's the maniacs running the asylum now. Huh? Right? I truly appreciate how in-depth this work also goes on in who this Bruce is and his logic, which is similar to main Bruce, but in key different ways. His internal logic is mostly developed during issue 4, as it shows his early days as he's developing his Batsona, so to speak. His initial design also looks a lot like Batman's original vampire-like design, and that's f***ing awesome. For one, he realizes beating up thugs is not enough, since they are also just desperate people. He figures he needs to go after the people at the top that profit and enable the misery. The source. The whole of issue 4 is wrapped around thematically by a conversation Bruce had with his dad while showing different time frames in his life and events that tie to it. Absolute Batman doesn't do it every issue, unlike the Ultimates, but the strong writing and thinking required for doing this kind of thing is always present for all the series. Like using Alfred, who's still a super spy here, as a narrative framework to get us to know everything on the first issue. I really do love the art and paneling. The comic actually loves using very small panels, which serves to keep the action kinetic and also makes all the issues feel very dense with information. But it also makes it so that whenever the bigger panels do come in, they feel that much more special and emphatic. There's also a liberal use of shadows and colors to really set the tone in certain scenes. I also particularly love how they leave Bruce's open mouth in the shade, so he looks just like a furious shadow come alive. Issue 2 I think best exemplifies all that is great with the art. Nick Dragota does the art and Frank Martin the color. Lastly, the violence is also woof! Love how brutal it is. It really serves a Batman comic to be the most realistically brutal of the Trinity, since he is, you know,
Just a man.
oh wait, no.
Just a bat.
Why do I always end up singing these? But in the world of a man dressed as a bat breaking people's necks, the most unbelievable part is he being 24. And already haven't had like 5 different public service jobs. God, he's younger than me. Death to Kronos. 24? This competent? No, that's peak fiction. That's absolute insanity. You see what I did there? Absolute insanity. I am gonna fall off my chair. Absolute Flash is the one comic in the Absolute line that is just kind of there for me, at least so far. It's not bad, but it hasn't hooked me yet. It follows Wally West, the child of a military general who has recently just lost his mother. He's aloof and doesn't have that much of a good connection with his dad, differently from the great one he had with his mother. So he's an anxious kid that kind of just wanders around. He has no friends due to being an army brat, what with all the moving around, though at the start of the comic he does make one friend on the current army base he's in, scientist Barry Allen, who's working on a secret project. Things go wrong, as they usually do these things, and Wally gets his powers but ends up on the run from the military. Something really f***ed up happens here, by the way. I'm not gonna spoil it because I think it's a really good, shocking moment when you find out, but wow, dude gets no breaks in whatever universe he's in. Eventually he teams up with another military experiment, Gorilla Grodd, who seems to fuel other escaped military experiments. And we end up with a kind of villain of the week setup like in the Flash TV show. I'm guessing Wally will feel responsible for the mess that gave him his powers that also allowed the escape of other metahumans, and will decide to go after them. I'm guessing that's gonna be the case. Again, we haven't gotten that far yet with this book for me to tell you that's 100% what's gonna happen. One thing Absolute Flash does really well is the way that it ties Wally's personality and flaws with his powers. It's a good setup where his powers can be really destructive if he doesn't learn how to cope with his inner world and his body's self-sabotage. You also just love to see both Barry and Wally together in a mentorship relationship, and I'm glad we're really seeing this here. So yeah, not much to say here. Which, to be fair, is probably because this is also one of the absolute comics that came after the original 3 of the DC's Trinity, so it has less issues out compared to those. And since we're on the topic, the last comic we're going to be taking a look at is Absolute Green Lantern, which pretty much released alongside The Flash. Hey, Future C here, and I was looking online when I saw a comment that kind of made this comic click for me. I saw somebody say that Absolute Flash is very much like Ultimate Spider-Man, and that just made everything make sense because, yeah, that's exactly it. It's gone about a young boy with superpowers trying to find his place in the world with problems that are going to be very relatable to that audience. And in that sense, I think this is super cool. And I also think that's probably why it didn't click for me. I'm not a teenager anymore. I definitely feel like sometimes comics have veered a bit too much towards an adult audience. I don't feel like there's a lot of good comic books for like teenagers. It's very much either a very kid comic book or a very adult comic book. Haha, win a Toys R Us shopping spree with Avengers issue 200, where Captain Marvel has her rapist baby! Oh, Christ, man. This one's a toughie for me. It has a really interesting and mysterious setup, but you're either going to be very into the writing, or you're going to bounce right off of it. The story begins with Dizzy Hall Jordan walking along a road in the desert with a up black hand he's barely in control of. Meanwhile, a spaceship has dropped on top of a town miles away. We then get flashbacks to the past, as we learn that the other would-be lanterns from the main continuity were all part of a friend group with Hal, and all of them were in that town when suddenly it was encased in a green force field. An alien named Abin Sur appeared and proclaimed that judgment was in progress, and seemingly dematerialized Guy Gardner and a bunch of people. Right off the bat, we get high stakes. Everyone's in danger, and even though Hal made it out, something has clearly happened to him. The rest of the comic is a drip feed of answers, so the main appeal at first is just figuring out who died, what happened, and why. And this is where my first problem with the comic comes in. Curiosity isn't enough to motivate you to keep going with the comic. Unlike the Absolute Trinity, this comic takes far too long to engage emotionally with you, which makes the pacing feel sluggish because all we're doing is waiting for the answers, instead of enjoying our journey to them. It would have gone a long way to get us invested in the comic if it tried to show more of the horror of the situation inside the Green Dome, which the comic only hints at via dialogue, saying supplies are dwindling and people are just straight up disappearing. We don't see any of that or feel desperation with the clock running out, which is why the comic only truly seemed to hook people around issue 4, when we get a lot of answers and character drama. The art is good, the character designs being a highlight for me, they all look very modern and cool. I also really dig the extra effort that went into making them very different people. Again, not just in the art, but in the writing as well. Hal's an insecure toy seller, John's a smart, self-assured doctor, and Sojourn is divorced. And gay! The two best traits! Also, Guys doesn't win. That's a pretty unique trait too, being a Kansas song. But back to the art, it's tough for me because it can look awesome, but it can also look really f***ing rough sometimes too. And don't get me started on how it insists on doing this lazy-ass blurred background, and you know how much I like backgrounds. Now, it's an aesthetic choice that admittedly does give the comic a very movie-like energy, like we're seeing things from the perspective of a camera, but it just doesn't do it for me personally. As for the writing, well, it feels clunky. But the worst part for me is how forced the events can feel. Look, I'm going to spoil a little of the first issue here, but if you care about first issue spoilers, I just don't know what to tell you. Get therapy or something. Learn to enjoy the journey and not just the dopamine of surprise. So the first issue is the worst to me. The diner scene in particular. Like the story keeps saying, be without fear, and yeah, both Hal and the patrons act like they lost all sense of self-preservation. Hal exposition dumps while dropping more red flags in an NRA convention, while the patrons are just so bizarrely aggressive towards someone who is clearly an unstable and dangerous individual. Now, to be fair, it is mostly just this one macho guy, but the waitress is also crazy. Now, you can reasonably justify all these choices as realistic by the characters. The dude that escalates, Hal being so traumatized that he isn't thinking straight, and I wouldn't argue against that, but the story clearly wants us to see this as something of a tragedy, in the hand as a malicious cursed thing that is driving this, but it's hard to feel all that when you're just left thinking about how stupid everyone was acting, you know? With all that said, it all does progressively get better. Everything after issue before, I have just really liked. The pacing is significantly better, everything is tied together in some way, and we get a lot of unexpected reviews and twists about what happened and so on. We also start getting into the spectrum of light stuff and how the characters' struggles and personalities relate to it, in an esoteric and philosophical way. I'm not going to spoil this part because it's such a huge incentive to read this comic, but it's a very different idea from Space Cops, but it still does relate to the original metaphorical ideas behind the spectrum of light. I really enjoyed it. It's like alien philosophy. So that's it. Those are all the Absolute books currently out. And there are more on the way, and even more issues that have come out since I began making this video that got delayed because I got sick and then had to pull some teeth and rest, and so on and so forth. Life. So I highly recommend reading the Absolute line of comics for sure, particularly Wonder Woman and Martian Manhunter. Absolute Batman has kind of been hogging a bit of the spotlight, and for good reasons. It is good, but I implore people to give the other books a chance because they're also just too good. So, key takeaways? I think the line also beats Marvel's Ultimate Universe. Without getting too much into the weeds of it all, I think it's because the pacing of Absolute is overall just way better. Most of the Ultimate books feel like they take too long setting things up. And 2, I think the Absolute comics do in general take the better approach of an alternate universe reboot by changing things up radically, but still keeping the heart of the characters. Shake up what has gone stale or spoiled, while keeping what we love so much about them. And the comics of the Ultimate line that measure up, in my opinion, are all the ones that do just that very well, like Spider-Man and the Ultimates. Last takeaway is that Dennis Camp is literally the GOAT. Like, the best books on both of those lines right now are literally his. Like, what the hell? And I'm told, like, the other comic that he did is also really good, so I will definitely check that out at some point. See you later.
Back. We'll not tolerate drowning here.
Don't worry, we're here to save the day. Also because it's someone's birthday. No! Not in the lava! No! Bitch!
That's that.